Well,
what does it do to you?
Well, I don't think. Well, it's interesting that you say that because you know this is of course nothing against you, but in the sense that that's what Russians think that in Russia one thinks that Russianness means not being able to be self-critical, and I think I noticed that even the people outside Russia, consciously or subconsciously, think that the definition of a Russian is this kind of very special sort of pride, which accepts no objective view of oneself, and certainly nothing of the kind that Germans did after the war, trying to reassess what happened during the Nazi times. That there's a consensus that Russians are incapable of that, which I find that's more terrifying than to face the facts I'm talking about in the film.
It's not that what I had in mind.
No, it wasn't the criticism. I was kind of putting it slightly rhetorically.
But it's making a film. I mean, was the film shown in Russia?
No, not in any kind of, not like, well, some people saw it in little clubs with, club meaning, a laptop, a little DVD, light coming from windows, and you can hardly see anything, and with low quality sound, hardly, and people would still stand and watch for 2 hours. So, yes, in those conditions, some people, very few people saw it.
When you started the film, when you started to do the research, did you have any clue that it would be as bad as this?
No, that's a very good question. I didn't, and to my surprise, if not kind of shame, I knew very little about what happened in Abkhazia. And at the beginning, then that's where we decided to include that little vox populi at the beginning, where people say that they know nothing at the beginning of the film. And that was at the time when we had no censorship. There was information was absolutely free. There was about 1991. Anything could show anything critical, anti-Russian, quote unquote, and still people didn't know. So imagine what people know now, and or don't know now. And I heard vaguely, yes, that there were conflicts. And I knew, of course. I mean, to be honest, these problems, Hagians and Georgians and South Ossetians and Georgians, they have a long history, and Georgians weren't always right, by the way. But my film is not like a journalistic, objective account. The one hand and the other hand. What I was concerned was precisely, as you say, about my own discovery. About what we Russians did there, and as the woman whose son was killed says that, and I think she's right, that if we were out of there, they would have, in a situation where, because it's partly the result of the collapse of the Soviet Union, but with the time, if at least one party was kind of trying to build a democracy, and with all the problems, Georgia is trying to build a democracy now, and so a little bit of goodwill from one side, and without Russia, they would have learned to live together, I'm sure.
You say that it's not a journalistic film. You looked more to the attitude of the Russians. I'm a journalist, and as a journalist, there was a question that popped up in my mind about Abkhazia, the terrible atrocities that are being booked in the Black Book on Abkhazia. Is there anything comparable from the other side?
I tried to find out about it, and interestingly, the more eloquent and more objective, in my view, and producing some bad facts, that information came from Georgians. In Abkhazia, people were telling, well, they were just insulting Georgians. And when I said, what...
This is bullshit.
Well, you can then ask question and
I'll ask a question now from our president.
Yeah.
Okay. Why didn't you...
Just a second.
I'll be very interested in what you say.
Let him finish his...
I'll be very interested in what you say. Yeah, but why not wait? Why not wait for your turn, take a microphone, and explain what you think? What?
I didn't know there was answer in my turn.
Sure.
Why not?
There will be questions.
Of
there will
course.
be ample possibilities.
We're in a free country. You're not in Russia.
No,
And let me finish now. Okay, thank you. You're not in Russia, so let me finish.
I'm not from Russia.
Say it again.
I'm not from Russia.
But I didn't say
sir,
you're in Russia.
Please, will you please leave the floor
Yeah.
to Mr. Nekrasov now, and
So,
I will give you the floor later on, okay?
So, in my experience, when I talked to the Abkhazians, they were saying, yeah, Georgians were just oppressing us, and talking in rather vague terms. I never heard from Abkhazians of a specific fact of atrocity anywhere comparable to this. In Georgia, a few people, by the way, officials, who, some officials responsible for Abkhazian policy or so-called reintegration policies, they accepted that there were atrocities from the Georgian side. But what does mean the Georgian side? Because at the moment of the collapse of the Soviet Union, there were all kinds of forces. I had, for example, a story from that Georgian family is in the film, but I just couldn't include everything because in the way that it was not very clear. But the story is this Georgian who is one of the people who sees his home destroyed, the family and all the man. He told me a story that he was a Georgian policeman, and he was wounded rather gravely by Georgian Mkhedrioni, this kind of nationalistic Georgian force in the 19-something, early 90s, and he was sort of lying there around, just lying and bleeding, and Ossetians came, picked him up, took to Tskhinvali, and cured him, basically, and he was very grateful. So, this was a time where, this was a time of civil war. It's not a question of who, Russian or non-Russian. Russian were fighting Russians. Georgians were almost killed in Georgia. There were the important thing is to overcome that. And as people, of course, there's the problems even in Belgium, between French-speaking and Dutch-speaking. But this is we have to find a language to describe these things objectively. The amount of the gravity of crimes committed against Georgians, I didn't find myself in Georgia. There were some murders in South Ossetia and Abkhazia, and I found some information on murders in South Ossetia, yes, but not throwing people alive in wells and stuff.
I'm asking it, I don't know what about the audience, but of course we know since the war in Yugoslavia and before that when there is a war going on, especially a civil war, from both sides, the lies are...
well, we know the the casualty is truth, and trying to show it in the analysis of the media.
So that was one of my second thoughts by looking at the film. That I don't doubt the stories of the people you interview, but there must be a history to this Abkhaz war as well. Maybe this is a good moment to give this gentleman the floor. Maybe you can elaborate. Maybe you should come here for a second, because it's difficult to hear you.
Hello. I'm actually from Abkhazia, but I've been living abroad for a very long time. I find quite amazing that the gentleman couldn't find anyone who could tell him about the atrocity of the German forces that actually invaded Abkhazia in the first time. The German forces. The German
Georgian.
The Georgian. This is Freudian slip. The Georgian forces who invaded Abkhazia, and they sent troops, they sent tanks, they sent planes, and the Abkhazians didn't have any weapons. And you know, they were saved by the fact that the Russians opened their border and they managed to cross the border. And you know, I don't know any family in Abkhazia who would lose a son or you know, some woman being raped. And I find it amazing that the gentleman couldn't find anyone who could tell him this story. I mean, I don't know any single family in Abkhazia who hasn't suffered from the Georgian forces. This is just unbelievable.
And can I answer? Thank you very much for your comment. Just a little historical information. According to all accepted sources, according to all sources, respectable sources in my view, Abkhazia is Georgia. If you wish, Georgia is Abkhazia. As you probably remember, or you were not around at the time. Kutaisi was, which is a very Georgian city, second largest city after Tbilisi, was the capital of something which was called Abkhazia at the time. So very respectable name, Abkhazia, indeed. It was one and the same country. Even according, as far as I know, even according to nationalistic, let's put it this way, not in a bad sense, kind of patriotic, Abkhazian sources,